This month we are looking at Westminster. Woo! I love this station. The original station opened in 1868. 1868 was the year of the last execution, the last public execution in Britain. Fun fact, not so fun maybe. When it first opened in 1868, it was originally, a modest surface level stop, but it's undergone a lot of transformation. The most dramatic was for the Jubilee extension, which was completed in 1999, when the station was redesigned by Michael Hopkins and Partners into this absolutely stunning, sleek industrial style that we know and love today. I love this station. I love the exposed concrete, the dramatic escalators. I think it is absolutely stunning, and it's won quite a few awards. I mean, just look at it. It is a thing of beauty, and I was lucky enough to have it all to myself because I went really early on a Sunday morning. It's normally absolutely packed. It's a very, very busy, very touristy area of London, so it's quite rare to see it this deserted. I love this station. Isn't it spectacular? I've got a great little tour for you ahead. I'm going to do a little women's history tour because you know how I love my feminist history and my women's history. So that's what we're going to do today. But before then, let's have a look at the station summary. So like I said, station opened in 1868. It's on 3 lines, the Jubilee, the District and the Circle. It's in Zone 1. It's got 4 platforms. The borough is the City of Westminster, obviously, and it had a previous name of Westminster Bridge. The whole walk takes about an hour, I would say, to loop round, but the video is not going to take an hour because I'll obviously speed up the footage. I'll show you the highlights, and if you want to do the walk yourself, as always, maps are available in the free Go Jauntly app. Okay, let's do it. As you come out of the station, you are greeted with the absolutely magnificent Houses of Parliament building and the Elizabeth Tower, the clock tower. Look how spectacular it is. Absolutely gorgeous. As I got there, the sun was just coming up and it was stunning. Much better in person than on film because it's hard to film in low light, but you get the idea. This street we're walking down now is called Bridge Street, which leads to Whitehall, which is this. There are a lot of magnificent buildings down here, mainly government buildings. I could cover it all, but the tour would be ridiculously long. So this is a women's history tour, pretty much. So I'm just going to focus on statues and buildings and so on that are more tied to women's history. I will touch on other things that pique my interest because it's my channel and I make up the rules. Talking of the channel, I've got some goals this year. I'd like to aim to cover 12 stations this year. I will be visiting some stations that I've done previously as well. Some of my ones that I did when I first started the channel because those videos are a little bit janky and I've kind of found my groove now. So I'm going to revisit those and delete the old ones, I think. And I've got a goal to hit 500 subscribers. You don't make any money on YouTube until you've got at least 1,000 subscribers. So I'd like to increase my numbers. Not that I'm here for the funds or the fame. I'm just here because I enjoy doing it. I'm not doing it for the money. That said, I'm not allergic to money, so it would be nice to be monetized, so then I can earn a little bit of pocket money from my project. So if you're not subscribed, please do. I think some people watch my video without being subscribed. I think my dad might be one of those people. I think sometimes people don't realise how important it is to creators to have people subscribed. It costs you nothing, you just have to tap the little button. Yeah, it's great because it makes me look good and it gets me on the way to making a little bit of money for the channel. Anyway, enough chat. We are now at our first point of interest on our women's history tour, which is this, the Women of World War II monument, unveiled in 2005 by the Queen Elizabeth II. It features a collection of uniforms hanging on pegs, symbolising the diverse roles that women took on during the war. You've got nurses, munitions workers, air raid wardens, code breakers. It's a curious little monument, isn't it? Because it's like saying, right, these women took on these roles and now they've hung their uniforms back up on the pegs and gone back to their daily lives. So it's quite interesting. Art imitating life. When it was unveiled in 2005, military helicopters flown by all-female crews were flown over to mark the occasion, which I think is cool. And it's here, the monument is here, because it was championed by Baroness Betty Boothroyd, who is a legend in herself. She raised some of the £1 million for the statue by going on to a celebrity episode of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So how fantastic is that? I think that's brilliant. I love it. Next up, we've got Downing Street, which is just there by those black railings. Named after George Downing. Not a lot to say about him, just that it was named after him and it might win you some points in a pub quiz one day. It's been home to the Prime Minister since 1735. Numbers 10 and 11 are grade 1 listed, so we get points for those. And number 12 is grade 2 listed, so points are plenty. You can't get down there, obviously. It's heavily guarded. We're doing a women's history tour, so I couldn't do a women's history tour and go past number 10 without mentioning Margaret Thatcher. Love her all over. She was the UK's first female Prime Minister, and for that I will give her PowerPoint. She was Prime Minister from 1979 all the way through to 1990, which is basically my entire childhood. When I was a little girl, I thought that women ran the world. And I can kind of see why I thought that, because, you know, everywhere I looked, there were women in positions of authority and positions of power. I think that's good. I'm glad I grew up like that. I'm glad I grew up believing that women ran the show. And I can totally understand why I thought that, because Margaret Thatcher was running the government, the Queen was in charge of state, and then the Queen of Pop herself, Madonna, was absolutely dominating the charts. So why would I not think that? We're on a women's history tour, so I won't dwell on these phone boxes for too long because they're not related to famous women of history, but I will just point them out because I love them. These are the Giles Gilbert Scott iconic phone boxes, and they're listed buildings. I don't think a lot of people realise that these are, you know, grade 2 listed monuments because they are so iconic, and a lot of them have got, you know, little signs on them to explain that they're listed. Next up, we've got Parliament Square, which is a green space that has 10 statues of important historical, political figures. I will put pictures up on the screen of all of the statues that are in the square, but I won't touch on all of them. The one I'm going to touch on, obviously, because it's a women's history tour, is this one. Millicent Garrett Fawcett. Iconic suffragette leader and general all-round powerhouse legend of a woman, holding up a banner that says "Courage calls to courage everywhere." Her famous quote, taken from a speech that she gave in 1913 after the death of Emily Wilding Davidson, the suffragette who famously stepped in front of King George V's horse at the Epsom Derby. At the bottom of the statue, there are 55 names and images of suffragettes, suffragists, allies to the women's movement. I will put the full list of all 55 in the notes, and some individuals that we've already seen on Project Womble would be Henry Fawcett, Millicent's husband. We saw him on our temple tour. Louisa Garrett Anderson, we covered her in Tottenham Court Road. Lillian Lenton, who we saw when we did St James Park, and Emmeline Pankhurst, who we're going to see in a bit. Just across from Parliament Square, you've got the iconic St Margaret's Church where Winston Churchill got married. I do apologise for the low light. I was there early in the morning. I'm not sure the footage really does these buildings justice. Next door to St Margaret's Church, we've got the absolutely iconic Westminster Abbey, which needs no introduction. Just look at it. It is a thing of beauty. It's been the site of practically every coronation since William the Conqueror in 1066. And, quirky fact, it's technically not a cathedral, but a royal peculiar, meaning it's directly under the monarch's jurisdiction rather than bishops. Just because I love the word peculiar, we're going to give it quirky points. We're just heading along Broad Sanctuary, turning into Great Smith Street, because there's a blue plaque down here that I want to show you. But on the way, let's have a chat, and I want to tell you a little bit more about the suffragettes before we get to the plaque. So the Votes for Women movement kind of formed into two groups. You had the suffragists, who were peaceful campaigners, headed up by Millicent, Garrett, Fawcett, and then you had the suffragettes, who were militant campaigners, headed up by Emmeline Pankhurst.
Take heart, for Mrs. Pankhurst has been clapped in irons again. No more the meek and mild subservience we. We're fighting for our rights militantly. Never you fear.
They were focused on deeds, not words. That was their motto. They were more disruptive, and civil disobedience was their thing. Smashing shop windows on Oxford Street, chaining themselves to railings, getting arrested, getting into scrapes, getting into prison, going on hunger strike. Both groups were aligned on, their goals, and both got on, as far as I can tell from their history books. It's just they just both went about achieving their aims through different methods. This building we're looking at here is 22 Great Smith Street, and this was the headquarters of the National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies, the NUWSS. It was set up in 1897 by peaceful campaigner Millicent Garrett Fawcett, and membership grew to 50,000 members by 1913, which was the year that Emily Wilding Davidson was sadly killed at the Epsom Derby, which obviously raised awareness for the cause. One street along, on Tufton Street at number 24, we've got this beautiful 1925 building. It's a listed building called Sumner House. Mary Sumner House, named after Mary Sumner, who set up the Mothers' Union, which advocated for women's suffrage, education and improved child welfare. And her work was quite radical for the time. She was a Christian woman and wanted people to raise their children in Christian values. But a lot of her work was about empowering women and families. It's a lovely building, isn't it? I love these 1920s buildings. It's my thing. I think they're beautiful. We're still on Tufton Street, and there's quite a few blue plaques down here, so let's have a look at them. The first one is for social reformer and feminist thinker Eleanor Rathborne, who pioneered family allowances, and she also succeeded Millicent Garrett Fawcett as president of the suffragist organisation. Plaque points, power points and book points for her, because she wrote a book, The Case for Family Allowance, in 1940. And then, keeping with the theme of books, we have got Siegfried Sassoon, English poet, World War I poet and friends with Wilfred Owen. And then directly opposite that, we've got Sir Michael Balcon, pioneering British film producer and head of Ealing Studios. He produced films such as the Lavender Hill Mob. Lavender Hill is in London. I'll take you there at some point on a tour. Okay, next up we're heading into one of my favourite back streets in London, Cowley Street. These streets are spectacular. Pretty much every other building is a listed building, and they are just so beautiful. Look at these gorgeous Georgian homes. Absolutely stunning. This area is called Thorney Island, actually, because it used to be like a marshy island surrounded in water. Not anymore though. Look at it. I looked up how much it would cost to buy one of these, and they are absolutely crazy money. But anyway, we've got some blue plaques down here. We have got Sir John Gielgud, famous actor, famous Shakespearean actor. This plaque was unveiled by Dame Judi Dench and Sir Ian Kellen, who were friends of his. Lovely house, grade 2 listed. And then just across from there we've got a blue plaque for Lord Reith, who was the first Director General of the BBC. Look at this beautiful house. I wanted to be a bit nosy about this house, so I went and had a look to see how much it sold for, because it was on the market quite recently. It's a grade 2 listed 6-bedroom house, and it went for 5 million. Well, it was listed for around 5 million. That's wild, right? If you like houses, look it up. Cowley Street leads into Barton Street, another gorgeous street. I love the quiet back streets and backwaters of London. They're just glorious, aren't they? Look at the difference between this and like the absolute carnage and tourist overload that is Westminster Bridge, where people are sort of like fighting over each other to get selfies. They're just worlds apart, aren't they? At number 14 Barton Street, we've got a blue plaque for T.E. Lawrence, better known as Lawrence of Arabia. We get plaque points and we get screen points because obviously the film Lawrence of Arabia, absolutely epic, Oscar-winning, amazing film that is often hailed as one of the best films of all time. And we get book points because he was a writer. He wrote 7 Pillars of Wisdom. We are halfway into our tour now, roughly, so I'll insert a map as is customary so we can see where we are, where we've been and where we're going. Let's have a quick look. So we started at Westminster, didn't we? And then we headed north towards the Women of World War II Memorial, had a quick look at Downing Street and then headed back down south towards Parliament Square. We had a little look in Parliament Square. Then we headed past Westminster Abbey, down Broad Sanctuary, down towards the head offices for the Suffragettes Society, into those gorgeous back streets, which is where we are now. Next, we're gonna head across and look at the Jewel Tower and the Abington Gardens. Then we're gonna walk down to Lambeth Bridge, cross over the Thames, and then do the return leg of the journey up the South Bank towards Westminster Bridge. Let's do it. We are now in Abingdon Street Gardens, which is a fantastic little green space. Look how deserted it is, and you get a gorgeous photo spot of the Victoria Tower and the Houses of Parliament. It's also home to the Grade 1 listed Jewel Tower, which is the last surviving remnant of the old medieval Palace of Westminster. It was built in 1365. That's crazy, right? Originally constructed to house the personal treasures of King Edward III. I love this little park. It's great, isn't it? Brilliant place to admire the Houses of Parliament without the throngs of all the tourists. So the Houses of Parliament was designed by Charles Barry and Augustus Pugin, constructed between 1860 and 1867 after the Great Fire of 1834. So the original Palace of Westminster was all burnt down, apart from a few bits like the Jewel Tower that we've just seen. Okay, we are just crossing into Victoria Tower Gardens now, and in front of us we've got a statue for Emmeline Pankhurst, suffragette leader, deeds not words, powerhouse of a woman. The statue was unveiled in 1930 by then Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin. This guy, look at this guy, that's a power pose if ever I did see one. We're going to head into the park and walk along the north bank of the Thames down to Lambeth Bridge. It's a lovely park. I like this park. It's got some nice like elevated benches that overlook the Thames, and obviously you get a really nice view of the Victoria Tower and the gardens. Spectacular, isn't it? Did you know that the Victoria Tower is like a fireproof repository that holds really important parliamentary documents like the Magna Carta and so on? It's beautiful, really peaceful, lovely little park. I'm especially fond of the parks that back onto the Thames because I just love the Thames. I love to see it. There's something so magnificent about it, how wide it is and how it's been there for so many years. I love it. Victoria Tower Gardens is also home to the truly magnificent Buxton Memorial. Unfortunately, at the time of filming, it was under repair but I will put in a picture of it because I wanted to cover it. I think it's a fantastic monument. It was erected in 1865, marking 30 years since the passing of the Slave Trade Act of 1807, which outlawed the slave trade in the British Empire. Features 4 key figures who fought against slavery. So Thomas Buxton, William Wilberforce, a famous MP who was passionate about abolition, Granville Sharp, an abolition pioneer, and Hannah More, a writer who shaped public opinion through her works. It's a Grade 2 listed monument designed by Sir George Gilbert Scott, a relative of Giles Gilbert Scott, you know, the phone box guy. The Buxton Memorial is right next to Lambeth Bridge, which is just there in front of us. Fun fact, Lambeth Bridge is painted red to match the seats of the nearby House of Lords, and Westminster Bridge is painted green to match the green seats of the nearby House of Commons. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I thought it was quite interesting. So this current bridge that we're looking at now opened in 1932 to replace an earlier structure from 1862. It's Grade 2 listed, and the architect was Reginald Blomfield. We're going to head across the bridge and make our way onto the south bank. So let's do it. Okay, as if by magic, we are now south of the river, and we're just about to have a look at this gorgeous monument, the SOE Memorial. The lady we're looking at right now is Violet Szabo, who was a French-British spy. So the SOE, the Special Operations Executive, was established in 1940 by Winston Churchill, and it was a secret organisation tasked with conducting espionage, sabotage, guerrilla warfare. We talked about them when we did Baker Street because their head office was in Baker Street, and they're such an interesting group of women to look up. They were mainly women, all of them with fascinating stories, many of whom died. Most of them died, unfortunately. One of them, Noor Inayat Khan, we're going to look at next month. We're going to do Euston Square next month. And Noor Inayat Khan used to live over that way, so we'll talk about her when we do Euston Square next month. Just along from the SOE Memorial is this, a monument that needs very little introduction. The National COVID Memorial Wall, stretching over 500 metres, directly opposite the Houses of Parliament. It's a obviously poignant and very striking public art installation that is ever evolving, sadly. It's maintained by a small group of volunteers known as the Friends of the Wall. The original hearts were drawn in art pens, and they faded in the London weather, so each heart on the whole wall has been replaced with long-lasting masonry paint by the Friends of the Wall team. And they'll also add a heart for you if you're unable to get to London and you'd like one of the volunteers to write one on your behalf. So they've got a Facebook page and an Instagram page where you can donate and get in touch. Each heart on the wall represents one life lost. The memorial began in March 2021 and it's growing daily. There's about 220,000 hearts. It was originally intended being a temporary installation, but there's been obviously widespread calls to preserve it as a permanent and a national memorial, which I think it should. I think it's a very sad, very poignant, very striking piece of collective public art. I'll let you walk the wall. I won't talk all over it. I'll just put some music in and you can have a look. I think it's important for you to see the scale of it and see how long how long the wall is. I mean, you've really got to go and visit to see it in person to get the scale of it, but you get the idea. We're almost at the end of the tour now. Just a couple more things I wanted to mention. So you've got a beautiful view of the Houses of Parliament there. I wanted to talk to you about the Elizabeth Tower. So the clock tower is actually the Elizabeth Tower, and it was named after lovely late Queen Elizabeth II. It was renamed in 2012 to mark her Diamond Jubilee. The bridge we're looking at the moment is Westminster Bridge. We're going to go across there in a second. Like I mentioned before, it's green to represent the green chairs of the House of Commons nearby. If you time it right and you get there when the sun is lower in the sky, you might be lucky enough to witness the phallic shadows of Westminster Bridge, which are quite hilarious. I'll put in a picture and you'll see what I mean. So if we want to talk about amazing women of history, I think we couldn't do a women's history tour of Westminster without mentioning Boudicca, the queen of the Iceni tribe in East Anglia, and she started a fierce rebellion against Roman rule. She was unsuccessful, but she put up a hell of a good fight all the same. An iconic warrior princess, so it's lovely to see that she's got her statue here with her chariots and her horses. And that, my lovely friends, brings us to the end of our tour. I hope you enjoyed that. I love doing these tours. Like I said, we're off to Euston Square next month. If women's history is your thing and you'd like to watch more videos like this, then I think you'd really like my St James Park tour. And if you're watching in January and you're getting a bit cheesed off with the grey weather and you want to be reminded of how gorgeous and glorious London looks in the full bloom of summer, then check out this video, which is my temple tour